Well, thank you for joining in on the Everyday Dad podcast. This is episode number 3, and my guest today is Earl Moorrison. He is a retired police chief and a father of 4. Earl, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So, hey, if you wouldn't mind, maybe go ahead and just give us like a quick bio. Tell us about yourself, and kind of what what you do.
Sure. So I am a retired police chief. I was in law enforcement, criminal justice side of things for almost 30 years. I have 4 kids. My wife Penny and I have been married for almost 22 years.
Oh, nice!
Um,
Congratulations.
yeah, we have 4 kids, as I said, 18, 17, 15, and 6. So we have some gaps in there at the
Yeah.
end. It's one of the challenging things and joys of the life is having kids. I think being a dad is one of those things that can be like the most frustrating, but also the most rewarding things that you could be. And so we laugh because I was like, I had 3, and then 9 years later, I had the 4th one. And so I tell everybody that either I did a really good job and God said, "Hey, I'm going to give you another chance with another one," or I messed it all up for the first one. He said, "Hey, I'm going to give you one more chance to
Chance.
get this right with this other one. So here's another blessing for you." So I don't
That's
know
awesome.
which is correct. It probably depends
Yeah.
on the,
On the day. Yep.
but that's
No.
just a little bit about me.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Um, and we were chatting just there before I hit the record button. My dad just retired from 40 years of law enforcement this year. And kind of our joke in our family, I guess sort of a joke, is his first official day as being a sworn in police officer was the day that I was born. So he had to call in sick on his first day of being a police officer because I was being born.
Yeah,
But then it was also kind of a fun reminder that every year on my birthday was also his anniversary of being
right.
a police officer. But yeah, it's fun. So hey, I have just a couple of kind of we'll call them warm up questions just for fun. So this first one is what is something that I would never guess about you?
Oh, there's probably some things I'm a retired police officer, but my first major in college was actually nursing.
Interesting. Okay.
So I was actually a medic in the army
Oh
for
wow.
3 years, and thought that that was what I wanted to do when I got out. Now, my first love was always law enforcement. I wanted to do that when I went into the military, but it wasn't an opening. And so, they tell you, "Hey, just go here and you can do something else later." Well, I kind of liked it. And then when I
Yeah.
got out, I thought, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do." And then I was like, "Nah,
Nice.
it's just the passion's not there." So when
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tell people, most people that, they're like, "Really? Those things don't go together." It's like, yeah.
No, I have a friend who was in the military and now he's in nursing, and he jokes about. He's like, I poke holes in him and then I patch him up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the next question that I have, this will be interesting. Who would you like, or let me start. Sorry, I can read. Who would you most like to sit next to on a 10-hour flight, and why?
No one. I don't want to be on a 10-hour flight. I've been on them, and it's like I'm not a good traveler on a plane. I don't
Mhm.
sleep. I don't relax. And being in law enforcement, you're looking at everybody and everything.
Yeah.
I would want that to be the most probably quiet, calm person.
Mhm.
Whoever that could be, just it would
Yeah.
just sit there and not bother me because I'm not one
Yep.
of those that likes to, some people can sit down and they can just have this long conversation, and they don't care how long it is, and the next thing you know, you're like, they're telling you all kind of stuff. Me, I'm like, hey, you know what? We got 10 hours. 10 hours of quiet would be fine for me because I'm looking around at everything and trying to make sure that, that if something
Yeah.
goes wrong, I can react. So for
Yep.
me, just that person that's going to leave me alone.
Yep. That's funny. I was looking at those questions. I thought the exact same thing. I was like, "Can I choose nobody as an option?" Like, just empty seat next to me, or exactly
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
person who's just gonna sit down and fall asleep.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that would be ideal. Oh, fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you. Um, so with the Everyday Dad podcast, we like to do basically stories and just hear some stories of times that um, being a dad that you did something successful and you're like, man, hey, I did that one right. Let me do that again, and also hear some stories of maybe things that didn't go so right. But what you learned from that, and encourage other dads with, hey, when you're faced with this similar situation that I went through and I didn't handle it so well, here's what I learned from it. And let me encourage you to do it this way so that you don't have to make the same mistake I did. So, I mean, you've got 4 kids. You've got the range, the ranges there. I've got 2 kids. My son is 14. He's going to be 15 next year, and my daughter's going to turn 13 in January. So I'm creeping in on those teenage years, and it's an adventure. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I've got three teenagers all at the same time, and it is
Yeah.
definitely an adventure.
Hmm.
It's very different from my two teenage daughters to my 15-year-old son.
Okay.
I never really remembered that was such a weird age as a boy
Yeah.
until he started, when he got to be a teenager, 13, 14, now he's 15. Just I was like, I don't remember going through some of the phases that he's gone through.
Hmm.
I know I probably did, but it was just different.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways. Well, I know for me, I grew up way different than my kids, and one of the things that I always wanted, we were super strict at my house when we
Mm.
grew up, and it was like, you went somewhere. I remember being in high school, and I had a girlfriend that lived like 2 miles down the road, and I had to call when I got there and call when I left. And it wasn't
Yeah.
the age of cell phones. It was I
Yeah.
had to borrow their landline, so it's not like you could sneak around. They knew exactly what was happening. I was going to have to go call home and say I made it, and then
Yep.
call and say I'm on my way. And
Yep.
so very strict. And so there were some things that I knew that when I started having kids and started having a family, I wasn't going to be quite as strict on some of those.
Okay.
Now, took me a while to figure some of those out because my oldest, she's 18, she'll be 19 in February.
Oh wow.
She's now going a college student. She has a job. She still lives at home, which is all great, but she's got her own job. She's going to college. But we always laugh because she'll tell me that I'm not as hard on the 6 year old as I was her. And I just tell her, I said, well, the reality of that is that you and I learned together. I learned how to be a parent with you. And so I was actually trying to discipline the me out of my oldest daughter because she was as stubborn as hard headed as I was. And we would just butt heads on certain things, even as a 2 year old. Man, as a 2.5 year old, she did not sleep at night. And she was very, when you put her in her crib, she was climbing out the minute you stuck her in there. And it
Dang.
was this battle of she's not going to control things. We're the adults. We're going to do this. And so we
Yeah.
had this battle. And finally, my wife had to intervene and say, hey, look, you're both stubborn. You're not going to give up. Just let it go. And so we laugh about that today because I just tell her, it's
Hmm.
like, well, you do realize that we learned, you learned how to be the child, and I learned how to be the parent of what to be very strict and regimented about and what not to. And so I said, no doubt about it. I'm not going to sit here and try to lie to you like some people would and say, no, we're just as strict on her as we are you. We weren't, because
Hmm.
again, and then I thought, hey, but she's also got three teenagers that are teaching her things that I think you guys do on purpose to see if I'm going to punish her like I would have you. And so I just tell her, I was like, look, I learned how to be a dad from you. And I
Hmm.
knew what I needed to let up on the next one and the next one and then now her. So we have a really good relationship. We can laugh about that now, but she does not ever let me forget or miss an opportunity to tell me that my youngest daughter has done something that she would have definitely gotten her little butt tore up for or gotten in trouble for. So
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
it is what it is, baby girl, at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I feel like I've had that exact same conversation with my son and his younger sister, and I've had to be like, buddy, I've never had a 14-year-old before. I don't know how this works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You know?
they will do some things that push your buttons, and then, like I said, then they do some things, and you're just like you're in awe of their growth and their maturity. And so right now, honestly, man, I have the kind of the best of both worlds. I have that
Mhm.
6 year old who's discovering new things. And if you had a conversation with her and you didn't see how little she was, you wouldn't know she was 6 because she's
Right.
surrounded with older kids and adults. And then,
Yeah.
my son is 15, and then I got my oldest daughter, like I said, is in college. Well, I have one she's a senior. She's going to be starting her dual credits, so she's going to be enrolling in college next semester.
Oh,
And so
wow.
you see those steps in that maturity, and so it's like, okay, you feel like, well, maybe we've done something right because you see that growth there. And then I look
Yeah.
and I'm like, but I still have these other two that they still have some things to go through, right? There's still
Yep.
some molding and some processing there to like, oh, you're just like, okay, these did it, so now we just got to get the other ones in the same direction.
Nice, nice. So that's I guess how is that having, I guess 3 kids that are just about, I mean, almost basically driving age, and then the 6-year-old, like that's I guess kind of what's the dynamic, or and I know you've explained a little bit of that, but that's um interesting.
Well, and I mean, sometimes it is a challenge because I think, we've had this conversation at our house. My wife and I, and the older kids, we all sometimes forget that she's 6 because, we've been in this world and communicating. And, we obviously we treat her like she's 6, but we don't treat her like a baby.
Gotcha.
She's interacted with us, and she gets in there and she holds her on. But
Wow.
sometimes we have to peel that back and say, okay, let's not let you grow up too fast.
Hmm.
You're talking a little bit different than you should, and maybe you're listening to things that you shouldn't because it's for older minds and things. And so we have to realize, okay, if we're going to do some of those things, or there's something on TV that may be influential that she shouldn't be seeing, we have to be very intentional about saying, remember, she's 6. And when I tell my son who's 15 and my older daughters that, sometimes my wife and I have to tell each other, that remember, she's 6. You
Yeah.
start looking at these expectations because you've got a bunch of teenagers, and then you got to remember, okay, the little one is 6. You got
Yeah.
to pull that expectation back just a little bit and allow her
Yeah.
to be a kid. And so
Gotcha.
it's challenging sometimes. You just got to you got to be aware of it, and
Mhm.
know that when you're like letting it go too far in a direction, and just say, okay, we got to pull her back because she's 6, and we've got to make
Yeah.
sure that we do some correction there, or do some other things, or not expose her to those certain things. And so it really is a matter of just being very aware and intentional about not grouping her in with the older kids in certain things.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. Like, I mean, I think about like movies or something, where the older kids could handle, you know, something, and then try to be family movie night, and it's like, wait a minute, we have a 6-year-old. Yeah, I
And
can't.
you have to be you gotta be careful because
Mhm.
sometimes she doesn't understand that, and so we try to do both so that she understands the reason why.
Gotcha.
Because again, when she's exposed to all of us all the time, she wants to be in there and included, and they do a really good job of, um, including her in the things that they can. Be
Mm-hmm.
it, that I mean, they're all quite a bit older than her. They still do a very good job of including her in the things that they can, and not making it like, she's over here like she's really an only child because there's
Mm,
such a gap. I think
gotcha.
overall we do a very good job of making it where it doesn't feel that way.
Cool. That's cool. Um, I I read this. I think I listened to the audiobook one time of. I might get the name wrong. Kevin Lehman, I believe, wrote a book, and it was called The Birth Order. And he did this study about characteristics of children in the order that they were born: firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn. And they in their studies they found, I think it has been a while, I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but it was something like a 5 or 6 year gap, that if there's a 5 to 6 year spread and then there's another child, that child will then almost take on firstborn tendencies because there's been this gap, um, kind of a thing. So I guess it's in the back of my mind. I always find it kind of fascinating and very interesting when I kind of see those, like those different age gaps. It's really cool.
Yeah, and again, it does create that challenge because it does kind of feel that way because there is that gap.
Yeah. Um, so I guess I'll ask in kind of a follow up. Do you maybe have a couple stories of maybe a time or two that you'd feel comfortable sharing, that maybe you didn't handle a scenario as well as you would want to, and then maybe kind of what you learned from that, to help other dads out there, kind of, I guess one, uh, understand that challenges amongst dads are similar, and we all go through very similar things, and I think we can, learn and glean from other dads, um, and work on becoming better. So do you have a couple stories like that that you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you times where I've messed up, but man, I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm perfect as a dad, man.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I have a couple. I'll tell you one about my daughters, and really my second oldest that's 17,
Mhm.
and then I'll tell you one about my son. And so my oldest, she's the one that's experienced a lot of the first. She's
Mhm.
got her job. She got it first. She started college, and it's always the second child, and there's really no competition between the two, and we don't even we don't live that way. We just try to
Mhm.
get her to, hey, ask questions of your older sister because she may have experienced it and she can help you. But my middle daughter is very shy. She's not an
Mhm.
outgoing child. She's very, her comfort zone is that she just will shut down. And so, we would even, part of trying to get her out of that shell, and communication is so hard with teenagers today anyway, because everything is right here with a cell phone or a computer screen or an iPad, or, you know, everything is texting or calling or whatever. And
Yeah.
so, the face to face communication is one of the challenges, I think, from children all the way through adults today, is getting people to understand how to do that. And
Yeah.
so she would just withdraw, and we would just tell her, hey, look, in order to meet new people, in order to get involved in things, you have to go and you have to make an effort. And the example I can use is, like, we've been going to the same church for several years, and
Mm.
we've moved a few times in the last 10 years because of being a police chief. I've gone for a couple of different jobs in some different cities. And so, we're sitting there and we're just telling her, hey, look, you're going to have to make an effort to kind of be involved with the youth that's there and some other people. And so,
Mhm.
she was just kind of digging in her heels, and my son was kind of digging in too. He's only 2 years younger than her. My
Mhm.
oldest daughter was kind of pushing and doing some of those things. And, we kept just telling her, hey, look, you're going to have to make an effort because it's not just going to happen. And then it was
Yeah.
crazy. I'm sitting there and I'm giving her all that advice, and my wife and I are talking, and I had one of those moments, and you're looking at things, and I saw this, you see these reels and these videos all the time on Facebook and other things, and I had to laugh because it was exactly a scenario where the whole thing is that, you're talking about struggling to meet new people and be involved and connect. And then it showed this guy, and it shows him going to church, and he sits there, and it shows when it's over. The minute it's over, he's shooting out the back to get to his car to get out the parking lot. And I was like,
Yep.
oh crud.
Mhm.
That's what we do. That's what I was doing. Not that fast. I wasn't running out of there, but I wasn't making an effort to connect. But I
Yeah.
was trying to tell my daughter that she needed to make an effort to connect. Well, she was following my example. I had
Dang.
been setting the bad example for her unintentionally, But
Mhm.
that was what she was, I mean, she was playing off of everything that my wife and I were doing, and we weren't making that effort. And so I was like, you know what? If I'm going to tell her this is what she has to do, then I have to make that effort, and she has to be able to see that, because then I can say, "Hey, look, we've shown you how we've done it. I've even done it, even when it's uncomfortable." And so I then had to go and I had to make that effort and show her that I'm willing to do it so that I can teach you how to do it. And oh, by the way, I messed that up. I led you poorly. I gave you a bad example, and I probably cost you some time of being
Mm.
able to connect and get to know, because my comfort at the time was, let's just go in, we do what we do, and then as soon as it's
Mhm.
done, we all get the heck out of here and we'll go back to our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Not realizing that I was just setting a poor example for her. And so I, again,
Dang.
had to go to her and tell her that, again, and I'll tell dads across there, dads, moms, anybody out there that's listening,
Mhm.
guys, it's okay to apologize to your kids when you mess up. And matter of fact, I would tell you that it adds more value to you and to that relationship when you can go tell them that you screwed it up. Okay,
Mm.
we all will. If you haven't, you will. I promise you.
Yep.
We're nobody's perfect. We're going to make mistakes. The whole idea is that we learn from those things, right? And
Yep.
so that was one of those things that I learned early on that I didn't get when I grew up. That
Yeah.
my parents could be dead wrong, and it was still my fault. I mean, you could prove them. It's like you go to court, you give them all the facts, and you show them everything,
Yep.
and it's like you're
Yep.
still guilty. And I knew that when
Yeah.
that happened, and I was the parent, I knew that if I messed up, I needed to go back and make it right.
Yeah.
Even way back, I remember going back and just letting them know, hey, you know what? Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I got a little frustrated. Maybe I actually got mad and let the anger take over in how I was dealing with it. And so I think it's okay as parents, especially dads, to say, hey, you know what? Daughter, son, I messed that up. I'm learning just like you are. I'm going to get better at this, but I just need you to know I didn't handle that well. You see, what we're teaching our kids then is that it's okay if you mess up to say you messed up, but you got to do better. You got to strive to do better and want to do better. So it's okay when you do, but just make sure you try to make it right.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I identify with both of those scenarios. Uh, always trying to encourage my kids at church to go hang out with other kids and go meet the other kids. But then I'll sometimes I volunteer for our sound team, and it's so nice to just hide in the sound booth
Yeah,
and kind of
yeah.
stay away and kind of that same realization. I was like, okay, if I'm going to tell my kids they have to go make friends, then I have to go. I have to go meet people.
I mean, we got to step out of our comfort zone a little bit because we're trying to teach them how to do it. And it's like, the best way to do that is to set that example for them. It's funny. I remember again growing up that, when my dad used to get ready to spank us, and they did not spare the rod. Okay. They took care of business. And my
Yep.
dad, again, I grew up in the country. Uh, we grew up with the leather belts with the names on the back, and I'm a junior, and so he would come in and he would say this every time, and I didn't realize this until the first time I was going in there to spank my daughter as a little young kid, of what he meant. And so he used to tell me all the time, son, this is going to hurt me worse than it does you. And I'm thinking in my mind, is like, what do you mean hurt you worse than it is me? Hey, I tell you what, and I'm thinking this, I would never say this. So I never said this to him, but I tell
Yeah.
people, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, dad, let's trade, because you're Earl, I'm Earl. So it's just Earl spanking Earl, right? So let's just
Yep.
trade places and see if it really hurts you more than it does me.
Yeah.
And so when I got in there to discipline my daughter that first time, and I spanked her. I never used anything but my hand on them,
Mhm.
and I did it, and then I'm like, oh, that's what he meant, because
Yeah.
I got it. It's like I knew it was necessary to change the pattern of behavior, right?
Mhm. Yep.
But then it made sense what he meant by telling me that it was going to hurt him worse than it did me, because it's not that he just wanted to wear me out. And it felt like that sometimes, but
Yeah.
it was that he needed that to give me that correction so that I would understand that and grow from that. And man, that first time I was like, man, I wish he was still here for me to tell him, Dad, I got it. I get it now. And so every time I do, I explain that to my kids. It's like, it's not that I want to. It's not a
Mhm.
fun thing, but I
Mhm.
know what the product is when I don't.
Yeah.
Being in the field that I was in, that your dad was in, that we know what happens when you didn't do those kind of things, right? And so
Yep.
I just, I just think that's a good story for people out there, is that, they just need to know is it's not because I enjoy that. I mean,
Mhm.
I always tell everybody, and I teach leadership stuff, and we talk about accountability and discipline, those things. And I just, them and families, dads, parents, everybody out there, for me, the accountability and the discipline and the correction that shows and adds value. For me,
Mhm.
when you don't do those things, then you don't value your child. You don't value your people that are around you. You don't value those things because you don't care what they do. You don't care what they say. You don't care what they become. And so I would just tell everybody it's a necessary piece because it shows value to them. Now, don't misunderstand me. I do know there's people out there that don't do that the right way.
Mhm.
Um, but we have to have those things in place because that adds value to them, and it also teaches them right from wrong. It teaches them that you know what, if you don't want the consequence, then don't do certain behaviors. And so I think it's a thing that's needed, that sometimes in there I think we get away from it as a society because we've had people that abuse it, and there's always going to be those people, okay, that,
Yep.
that take it and do it the wrong way and don't use it for the way that it's intended.
Yep.
But I think that valuing our children by providing the guidance and the accountability and the correction is the best thing that we can do for them to add value to them as they grow up.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that, and I think from your career in law enforcement and stories my dad has told me from law enforcement, and I worked retail for almost 17 years. There's a lot of people out there that never got told no when they were a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And I think honestly, as a society, we kind of messed that up. That
yeah.
we gave everybody a trophy. We said yes to everything. We didn't teach people how to deal with adversity. We didn't teach
Mhm.
people how to deal with things that didn't go their way. And as parents, we've got to do better at that.
Yeah.
I was going to tell you, you asked a question. I was going to tell you a story about my son, the 15
Oh,
year
yeah,
old,
yeah,
because
yeah.
he's the difficult one. And I don't want to miss this because I think this is one
Okay,
that maybe a lot of people can relate to. Is that
okay.
I grew up in the era of holding the flashlight for my dad, and you didn't know where it was supposed to be, but you better figure it out,
You better
right?
figure that out. Yep, yep.
And if you get told to go get something, you better figure it out because it wasn't going to be good if you brought back the wrong thing or if you held the flashlight in the wrong area. And so,
Mhm,
I'm trying to connect with him, and this has been ongoing, and he's very reserved. He's just a quiet. Nothing really riles him up. He doesn't get overly excited about anything. He doesn't get too down about anything. He's just kind of a mellow guy. And
mhm,
so, talking to my wife, we're like, I want to let him help me do things, because it's time for us to be together. He
mhm,
doesn't, you know, crazy thing is that he didn't grow up like me. I'm a sports nut. He didn't get that
mhm.
gene. He
Okay,
could care less. I've got one daughter that'll watch football with me. My wife will at least, talk baseball with me, but my son's
okay.
not that way. He doesn't have
Yeah,
any of those same interests. And so I'm like, the only thing I've got is to get him to help me do things around the house, or they're cleaning up or putting things up or whatever. When I first started that, man, it would just frustrate me because I would tell him, "Hey, go do this," or "Go
mhm,
get me something," and I'm sitting there, and I don't. I mean, here's the thing: it's not that I need his help; I can do it without him. And I want dads out there everywhere to understand is that it's not about that, because that makes it about me. And so I was
mhm.
trying to find a way to make this about him where he could do something with me, and we could both say, "Hey, we did it together. We spent time together." And
Yeah,
so I would get so frustrated because I'd send him and it would feel like 10 or 15 minutes later and he's coming back and he doesn't have the right tool or he's asking me a question. I'm like, what took you so long to go figure out you didn't know what I was talking about? And I was like, so I start talking to my wife and she's like, well, he's not dumb. I said, well, I never said he was dumb. Don't misunderstand
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
And so what we figured out is that I've got to be very detailed with what
Mhm.
I tell him to go do or get because he is literal. So
Mm.
I started like, okay, I was like, okay, go in the garage and get me the screwdriver. And I have to tell him it's the Phillips head, it's the funky looking one, not the straight one. And if it's got a color on the handle, I have to say red, yellow, black, that
Yeah.
one, and it's in the toolbox that's on the shelf. That's the second shelf from the top. That's how
Mhm.
detailed I have to get with him. And let
Dang.
me tell you, everything that you tell him, he will do it,
Mhm.
but he doesn't stay focused.
Okay.
So it's like he'll come there. So if you don't give him all those details, he's going to come back and say, "Well, I couldn't find the screwdriver." And I go and I'm like, "The screwdriver right there." And now we have this thing. I'm like, so I had to realize that it was more about him wanting to do things with me, and so I needed to make it where he wants to do those and not get frustrated when it's kind of like yesterday we were hanging up Christmas lights and I'm
Mhm.
having him helping me and I'm trying to go around something and hand it to him. So I hand it to him once and I'm going back around to hand it to him again and he's already looking somewhere else.
Oh gosh.
And so I'm like, son,
Oh, man.
hey, one more time, So my wife and I laugh about it because she was like, "Well, did you get frustrated?" I was like, "No, I just called him back over because he's out there and he's doing it, but he's just." It's that mind of a 15-year-old where there's really no care in the world. If I told him to stand right there and not move, he would, but he'd be miserable, right? And so I
Yep.
had to realize not to get all frustrated and upset when I'm having him out there with me because it's not about whether he knows everything that I need him to know. It's about us spending time together. And,
Yeah.
and if I'm yelling at him, if I'm frustrated, if he doesn't feel like there's a connection there, he's not going to want to do that. He's going to be
No.
in there like, oh, I don't want to come out there. I don't want to go help dad. I remember being there sometimes like, I don't want to go hold the flashlight. I'm not going to know how to do it.
Yep. Yep.
So just to let people out there, it's like we had to figure out, for him is like, okay, if I want him to help me, I just have to be intentional about giving him the directions and being patient with him as he processes that differently than I do.
Mhm.
And that's where I think a lot of us get ourselves kind of jammed up is that we expect our kids to process things and do everything exactly the way that we do, and they're
Mm.
not all wired exactly that way, and that's
Nope.
okay. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
figuring that out so that again, I don't want to create a bigger gap between he and I. His 15-year-old awkwardness is bad enough without creating other stuff in there. I mean, I just
Yep.
think that's a normal thing for a 15-year-old boy that's just awkward. You're
Yeah.
figuring things out, you're learning things, you ain't got any cares in the world. It's like, and to him, honest to goodness, I could sit out there and yell at him, and it's like, he's not going to be phased. He's going to be like, oh, it was okay. Yeah, he yelled at me, but it was okay. I'm like, so I don't want to do that.
No. Yeah.
Because you want it to be a good experience that again he will want to when I say, hey, come out here and help me put up the lights or come out and
Mhm.
help me take care of the yard or do whatever. It's that bonding time that we get that, yeah, it's a chore in some of it for him, but it's a bonding time that we get that allows us to connect in ways that we wouldn't be able to because he likes different things than I do, and you got to
Mhm.
find ways to bridge that gap a little bit to be able to connect with all of your kids.
Yeah, no, that's super important. I think my son and I are definitely into that category of me needing to find things to do with him, and we have a couple things that we get along and we do together. But but yeah, also remembering that that's a super good point of our kids are not wired like we are. And it's so hard to remember that sometimes that,
Yeah,
you know,
it is because I
yeah.
don't think, not for a fault for any of our parents that, those of us that are a little older, that I think they did the best they could with what they knew, and with the
Mhm.
time that they had. But just
Yeah.
understanding that we're wired differently, and that I don't want to, leave any one of my kids out there on an island. I try to find some way that I can connect with each one of them. And of course, my oldest daughter, it's easy now because, we'll go to a coffee shop and she'll do schoolwork and I'll do work on the computer, and that's just
Mhm.
our bonding time,
Yeah.
or watching a ball game with my second daughter, and then my son trying to figure out some way to do that. And the little one's easy because she just wants to play a game or do something every now and then. You just make time to make sure you're playing or doing whatever she wants to. Now it'll be interesting
Yeah.
when she becomes that
She's
teenager of how to connect those two worlds. And again, I think we just have to be very intentional to find ways to do that and not expect them to always like come to us, because
mhm.
while my oldest and I mean, we love to go to the coffee shop, and I was trying to do that with my second daughter, and she was
Mhm.
like, well, she'll go and get something, but she doesn't like to sit and talk or do anything.
Mm.
She wants to get it and
Okay.
go. Well, me and
Yeah.
the oldest are like, we want to go kind of hang out, doing our own thing, but we'll talk in that too. And
Mhm.
and so just realizing that, okay, maybe the second one doesn't like it that much. And so we may go
Yeah.
pick something up, but she always wants to take it home. But that's
Yeah.
that shy, not wanting to,
Mhm.
be out there, uh
Yep.
personality too. So it's just finding that balance.
Yeah. No, that's super good. That's super good. So hey, well, I have just maybe one or two more questions, and we'll kind of start wrapping things up. I'll ask this, and I kind of mentioned this question earlier when we were chatting before we recorded. But so, what's been kind of your favorite part? And and I say in this stage of life with your kids, and if that's not a good way of asking it, or if a good answer, like the within the last like year ish, what's kind of been your favorite part of this particular stage having, and I guess you've got a very wide spectrum of stage 18, 17, 15, and 6, so that's a lot. But what's I guess what's kind of been, yeah, the favorite parts, and then I'll follow that up with the inverse of that question of what's been the kind of the most challenging for this particular stage with that group.
I think the favorite part is, again, we do have such a wide, 6, 15, 17, 18, but just seeing the 17, 18-year old mature, and take some next steps in life. They both have part-time jobs. The oldest is in college. The other one's about to start college next semester. Just seeing the fruits of your labor, of them putting that to use and becoming, maturing and becoming a productive adults. That's
Mhm.
a cool thing. And honestly,
Yeah.
to be able to go and have a cup of coffee with your daughters and just hang out, and I've had both of them that we've gone and we've just talked about next steps and about some of the things that they're the challenges that they're going to face with college and doing that. And then I think in it the fun piece too is that knowing that there's a lot of things that we're doing that's working, and seeing
Mm.
that happen. Now, the
Yeah.
flip side of that, the challenging piece is that with the 6-year old and the 15-year old, to make sure that we do it well with them, just like we did with the first two, that
Yeah.
we continue that and prepare there. And some of the challenges with all of them are, and I think this is probably true with most parents, is that what's challenging is when they start becoming older and they get in those teenage years and they start growing and maturing, and all the things come into play where they get jobs. They're thinking about their future with school. They're thinking about boyfriends and girlfriends, and seeing the pains and the challenges that they have to deal with when it doesn't work out quite the way that they want it to, or a relationship or a friendship doesn't grow in a direction that they would hope that it would. That's a challenge as you
Mm,
watch them deal with that difficulty, uh, wanting to fix it, knowing that you have to let them go through it. Um,
yeah. Mm,
that's a challenge, I think, man, as a parent, to watch your kids go through adversity and want to fix things and make it better, and know that some things, the best thing you can do is just be there when they need you, but don't
yeah.
try to fix anything. And that is a hard thing for me. It's a hard thing for most of us dudes, is that we want to fix
Yeah.
things. I,
Yep.
I was in business for a long time, just like your dad, that we were fixers.
Yep.
that,
Yep.
that to being hands off and saying, okay, we just got to let that play out, but we've got to be there when they need us. And so
Yeah.
creating that,
Mhm.
with those challenges and then seeing the good stuff, is that one of the things that my wife and I always talk about is we always want to have the environment where our kids can come and talk to us, and that they want to. And that's one of the things, man. I'll knock on wood and say that myself and my wife, we've done, I think, a really great job of fostering that kind of environment in our home, is that our kids still come to us when they're dealing with some of those things, that they still come to us and talk. Man, my 18-year-old daughter, who's about to be 19 in February, still asks
Mm,
permission to go places. I mean, she
that's cool.
respects that she lives under our roof, but she will ask permission to go do things. So, man, I don't take that for granted. I think that's just
Mhm.
a testament of what we've instilled into her and to all of our children. And I think it's just one of those are the fun things. Those are the things that
Yeah.
you're like, man, this challenge that you've been in, all these years, that's what makes it all worth it. It makes the challenges not seem so challenging, because you see those things and you see the product that's there.
Dang, that's really cool. I appreciate that. I haven't really thought about it in that respect, but kind of getting that 17, 18, 19-year-old age, you're kind of seeing the fruits of your labors pan out and you're like, all right, I hope I did this right.
And
Um,
it's
but
cool when you see it and it's the good
yeah,
pieces, and it's
yeah.
sometimes you just like, oh gosh, I can't take this for them, but I wish I could.
Yep, yep, yep. Oh man, that's awesome. Well, hey, I guess the last question that I have is, is there anything that maybe that you were hoping to communicate that I didn't ask, or maybe a question that you're hoping I would ask, and maybe the conversation didn't lead there, and maybe not. Maybe we got all the good stuff, but I guess I just want to give you the opportunity that I didn't leave anything unsaid or anything like that.
No, man, I don't think so. I mean, I've
Okay.
enjoyed our time together.
Yeah.
I think you could have 100 questions, you still wouldn't cover everything as a parent and as a dad.
No.
Uh,
Yeah.
like we said before, man, I would just tell dads, man, be there, but don't be too hard on yourself, because we all mess up. All I'm just
Yeah.
telling you is that when you do, make it right. And if
Yeah.
if there's anybody out there that's a dad that you haven't been, doing the things that should be doing, man, your kids need you. They need that value. They need the example. They need something to latch on to, and so they're looking for that from us. So just be a
Mm-hmm.
good example. Um,
Yeah.
Show them the way that it's supposed to be done. And again, when you mess up, own it. Tell them you messed up, and the only way to move forward is to own those mistakes and move forward.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Well, Earl, I super appreciate our conversation today. This has been a lot of fun for me. You've been great to talk to. I loved your stories. A lot of super good encouragement in there for dads. Um, excuse me. But that'll wrap up our episode today. Actually, before we wrap it up, I apologize. I know you have an online presence. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or reach out and learn more about you and what you do?
Sure. So we actually have a website that's earlmorrison.com, but I'm also on Facebook at Earl Moorrison Leading and Learning with Character. You connect with us at either one of those places. We're on there. We're also on LinkedIn. I don't do a lot on X, but
Okay.
those are the main ones: Facebook, LinkedIn, and our website, earlmorrison.com.
Fantastic. I'll make sure to put those links. I'll go track them down and get them in the show notes so people can link to that. But yeah, that wraps up our episode today. Thank you very much. It has been great.
Thank you.